In the heart of Lagos, where the sun painted the streets in molten gold and the air hummed with the music of life, lived a young woman named Zuri. Her name meant beautiful, yet beauty alone had never been enough to calm the restless storm inside her. From the moment she could walk, Zuri had been taught that happiness was not here, not now, but somewhere far ahead, in a future shimmering with wealth, recognition, and freedom. Her mother often whispered it as she worked late into the night stitching clothes for neighbors. Happiness, my child, is waiting for you in the distance. Do not settle for the small joys. Aim for the life that will make people speak your name with awe. Her father, a quiet man who worked as a night watchman, would nod silently, as if agreeing that contentment in the present was a luxury few could afford. And so Zuri grew up chasing shadows. Every morning she walked through the crowded streets of Balagan Market, her eyes scanning the horizon, her mind already in the future, a better job, a larger home, friends who admired her, and a life free from the cramped, chaotic neighborhood she called home. She rarely smiled, not because she was unhappy, but because she believed happiness was an investment she had yet to earn. At school, Zuri excelled. She memorized every fact, calculated every number, and polished every essay until it gleamed. Teachers adored her, classmates envied her, but none could penetrate the invisible barrier she had built around herself. To them, Zuri was a bright star, untouchable and mysterious. To Zuri, she was a student of tomorrow, a collector of experiences that might, one day, unlock the treasure chest of true joy. Yet, despite her careful planning and meticulous preparation, life had a way of reminding her that the future was unpredictable. One humid afternoon, as the city's dusty wind whispered through the narrow alleys, Zuri received a letter that would begin to unravel everything she thought she knew about happiness. It was not a letter from a university, nor a scholarship board, nor the promise of a lucrative internship. It was a small, crumpled envelope with no return address, containing a single sentence written in looping, urgent handwriting. "Look closer. What you seek is already here." Zuri laughed at first. Who could write such nonsense? And yet the words dug under her skin, twisting and turning with a strange resonance. She held the paper close to her chest and felt a warmth she had never recognized, a hint that perhaps life, in its unpredictable way, had something else in store for her. That evening, as she walked home, the Lagos streets felt different. The vendors shouting prices, the children playing soccer with a torn rag, the street musicians coaxing rhythms from battered drums, they all seemed to pulse with a hidden vitality she had never noticed. Zuri realized she had spent years looking past the present, blind to the heartbeat of her own city. She didn't know it yet, but this letter and the strange stirring it had caused was the first thread in a tapestry that would unravel her assumptions and lead her to an extraordinary discovery, that happiness was not a distant goal, but a delicate, luminous presence that had been surrounding her all along. And in that moment, with the Lagos sun sinking low and painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Zuri felt the first whisper of something she had almost forgotten: hope. The next morning, Lagos woke with its usual clamor. The city's heartbeat pulsed through the narrow streets like an unstoppable drumbeat. Zuri stepped out of her small apartment, the crumpled letter tucked carefully into her school bag. Her thoughts swirled like the dust storms that sometimes swept through the city, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted overnight. At breakfast, her mother hummed a cheerful tune while frying a kara in a worn, blackened pan. The smell of fried bean cakes filled the tiny kitchen. "You look distracted, Zuri," her mother said, sliding a plate across the table. "Another dream about that scholarship?" Zuri shook her head. "No, something else. I don't know yet." She almost laughed at herself. For years, her life had been dominated by deadlines, exams, and meticulous planning, and now a single cryptic message had her thinking about what? Living? Enjoying? She didn't know how to describe it. At school, Zuri was a blur of lectures and note-taking, but today she noticed small details she had never bothered to see before. The way the sunlight reflected off the tin roofs, making them glimmer like tiny mirrors. The laughter of her classmates, a cascade of unrestrained joy. Even the smell of the wet earth in the courtyard after a brief morning drizzle seemed richer somehow. During lunch break, Zuri wandered towards the edge of the school grounds, drawn by a sound she couldn't name. There, sitting on a low wall, was an elderly man, his skin the color of polished mahogany, his eyes sharp yet kind. He strummed a small, handmade kora, its strings producing music that seemed both ancient and alive. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked without looking up, as if reading her thoughts. "Yes," Zuri replied softly, captivated by the melody. "It feels like it's speaking to me." The man chuckled, a low, rolling sound. "Music doesn't speak of the future, young one. It only tells the story of the now. Happiness isn't waiting in some distant place. It is found in the rhythm of the present." Zuri's heart skipped. How could someone articulate what she had been feeling all these years? "But what about my future?" she asked, hesitating. The man's fingers danced across the strings, creating a sound that made the wind itself seem to pause. "The future comes for those who honor the present. Chase it blindly, and you will miss the treasure you are already holding." She wanted to ask more, to unravel his cryptic words, but the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Zuri watched him gather his kora and walk away, his form shrinking into the busy streets of Lagos, blending with the crowd. For the rest of the day, she could not stop thinking about him. Each step she took felt lighter, as if a part of her had been freed from the constant weight of ambition. She realized that for the first time in years, she was noticing life itself, the laughter of street children, the smell of roasted corn, the clatter of the market stalls. When she returned home that evening, the letter lay on her bed, its words now glowing in her mind. "Look closer. What you seek is already here." Zuri stared at it, and for the first time she did not feel impatience or frustration. Instead, she felt curiosity, a willingness to see, to truly see the life she had been living all along. As she lay down that night, the sounds of Lagos drifting through her window, Zuri realized something profound. The chase for tomorrow had left her blind to the beauty of today. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to simply exist in the present. A small smile curved her lips. Perhaps, she thought, happiness had been waiting for her all along, hidden in the ordinary, whispering in the corners of her life she had always ignored. The following morning, the streets of Lagos seemed to hum with an unusual energy, as if the city itself had noticed a shift in Zuri's spirit. She had awakened earlier than usual, her heart thrumming with anticipation rather than anxiety. The crumpled letter still lay beside her bed, a quiet reminder that she was being called to see the world differently. Zuri decided to walk to school that day instead of taking the crowded bus. The air was thick with the scent of fried yams, roasted corn, and the occasional whiff of exhaust from passing motorcycles. Every sound, the cries of street vendors, the distant wail of a siren, the chatter of children, felt amplified, alive. For the first time, she didn't try to push it away. She noticed it, absorbed it, and felt an unexpected warmth bloom in her chest. On her way, she wandered into Balagan Market. It was a place she had passed many times, yet today it felt like an entirely new world. The market was a riot of color, bolts of fabric stacked in impossible towers, shiny beads glinting in the sun, baskets overflowing with fresh fruits. Vendors shouted prices, bargained with customers, laughed and argued, all seemingly chaotic yet harmonious. Zuri's gaze was drawn to a small stall tucked between two larger ones. There, an old woman with silver-streaked hair and deep-set eyes sold handcrafted wooden figurines, each figure carved with exquisite detail, dancers frozen mid-step, elders with flowing robes, children clutching miniature goats. They seemed almost alive. "Good morning, young lady," the woman said, her voice like soft gravel. "You have the eyes of someone searching for something." Zuri hesitated, startled by her accuracy. "I'm not sure what I'm looking for," she admitted. The woman smiled knowingly. "Ah, many people think happiness is a destination, a thing to be caught, but it is in the hands of those who recognize it around them." She picked up a small figure of a girl laughing and held it out. "See this? This child dances in joy not because she has wealth or fame, but because she exists, and that is enough." Zuri took the figurine, feeling its smooth carved surface against her fingers. A strange energy passed through her, as if the girl's laughter had awakened something inside her. Gesturing toward the winding alleys of the market. Zuri followed, intrigued and unafraid. They passed stalls selling spices that perfumed the air with cinnamon and pepper, stacks of cassava and plantains, and clothes in colors so bright they seemed unreal. "Look at them," the woman said, pointing to a group of children playing with a tattered ball. "They do not worry about the future. They laugh because they can. They are rich in ways many adults cannot understand. Happiness, my dear, does not wait for permission. It waits for those who dare to notice it." Zuri felt tears prick her eyes. For years, she had been so focused on achieving, planning, and striving that she had overlooked these moments, the small joys that made life luminous. The letter, the music of the Cora, and now this encounter all pointed to the same truth. Happiness was not somewhere she needed to chase, it was already here, quietly waiting for her recognition. The old woman paused and looked into Zuri's eyes. "Tomorrow, come back, and I will show you something that will change how you see the world. But today, just look. See what you have been missing." Zuri left the market with the wooden figurine clutched to her chest, her mind buzzing with realization. For the first time, the future felt less like a burden and more like a possibility. Today, the present was alive, vibrant, and full of hidden wonders. And in that realization, a seed was planted in Zuri's heart, promising growth, change, and the slow unraveling of a lifetime spent chasing shadows. The next morning, the sun rose over Lagos like a molten coin, spilling light across the rooftops. Birds darted through the alleys, their wings catching the early light, and the city stirred awake in its usual riot of sound and motion. Zuri, however, felt different. She was no longer just walking through her life on autopilot. The letter, the music, and the old woman's words had stirred something inside her, a curiosity, a yearning to truly experience the world around her rather than always trying to escape it. By mid-morning, she returned to Baladan Market, her heart thumping with anticipation. She found the old woman waiting by her stall, her hands busy carving a small wooden drum. The air smelled of sawdust and spices, a combination that made her feel grounded and strangely at peace. "Ah, you've returned," the woman said, her eyes twinkling. "Good. Today you will learn something most people never understand. The present is alive, and it is not to be rushed." Zuri tilted her head, unsure how to respond. "But I have so much to do. School, work, exams. The future is calling." The woman chuckled softly. "Yes, the future always calls. But if you only chase what is ahead, you will never hear what is here. Today, I want you to notice life in its raw, imperfect beauty. Watch, listen, and feel." She handed Zuri a small basket and gestured for her to follow. Together, they wandered through the crowded stalls. At first, Zuri felt awkward, unsure what to observe. But slowly, she began to notice details she had always ignored. The vendor offering a free piece of fruit to a child, the way sunlight reflected in the puddles left by a sudden morning drizzle, the laughter of women bargaining playfully over the price of fabric. The old woman stopped at a stall selling bright orange pumpkins. "Touch them," she said. Zuri obeyed. The rough texture, the warmth of the sun absorbed into their skin. It was mundane, ordinary, but somehow alive. Feel it. This is presence. This is happiness in its purest form. It does not shout, it whispers. As they continued, Zuri began to experience small moments of joy. A street musician playing a tune that made her toes tap involuntarily, a child smiling at her without reason, a stray puppy curling up at her feet. Each encounter, though simple, struck a chord deep within her. "Do you see?" asked the woman gently. "Life is not only about reaching for tomorrow. It is about discovering these treasures that exist quietly, waiting for eyes that can truly see." Zuri realized she had spent years missing life's smallest, most profound gifts. Every day she had been racing toward a distant future, ignoring the pulse of the present, the laughter, the colors, the simple acts of kindness and beauty. By the time she left the market, the sun was high, and the city had grown hotter, dust and voices swirling together. Yet Zuri felt lighter than she had in years. She clutched the wooden drum the old woman had given her, a symbol of rhythm and presence. The day's lessons had opened her eyes. Happiness was not a far-off goal. It was here, in the heartbeat of ordinary life, waiting for her to notice it. For the first time, Zuri walked home without thinking about tomorrow. The market, the streets, the children playing in puddles, all of it seemed to pulse with a quiet magic she had never seen before. And as she lay down that evening, her mind buzzing with new understanding, she finally whispered to herself, "Maybe happiness has been with me all along, and I just didn't know how to look." The morning air was heavy with humidity, and the streets of Lagos were already alive with motion, hawkers calling their wares, motorcycles weaving through traffic, children skipping stones along the dusty edges of the road. Zuri woke with a restless energy, the wooden drum from the old woman clutched to her chest. She felt a stirring inside her, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Today, she was determined to practice the lessons she had learned, to live in the present fully, without letting thoughts of the future dominate her. Her first stop was the crowded market, where the old woman had promised a revelation. The market was chaotic as ever, traders shouting, buyers haggling, street performers weaving through the crowd. But Zuri moved differently this time, her senses alive to each detail. The aroma of roasted corn, the colorful fabric stalls, the laughter and shouts, all of it no longer overwhelmed her. Instead, it pulled her into the moment. She found the old woman near her usual stall, holding a tiny cage with a single, delicate bird inside. Its feathers glistened with iridescent shades of green and gold. The woman looked at Zuri with a mischievous smile. "Today, you will learn something about patience," she said. Zuri frowned. "Patience?" "Yes," the woman said, lifting the cage so the sunlight caught the bird's wings. "True happiness is not only found in noticing the present, it is found in surrendering control and trusting the moment. This bird is afraid. It wants to fly, but it will not do so unless you wait. Your task is simple. Release it, but only when it is ready, not when you think it should be ready." Zuri's hands shook slightly as she took the cage. The bird hopped nervously, pecking at the bars. Instinctively, she wanted to open it and push it toward freedom immediately. But the woman's eyes were calm, unyielding. "Do not rush," she whispered. "Patience is not waiting in boredom or frustration. It is watching, listening, and being fully present with what is." Zuri exhaled slowly, placing the cage on the wooden stall. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. She watched the bird, noticing every tilt of its head, every flutter of its wings, every tiny movement. Her heartbeat synchronized with the bird's nervous rhythm. Her mind, usually consumed with planning and tomorrow's worries, was entirely absorbed in the now. As the sun climbed higher, sweat dripping down her back, Zuri felt a strange calm settle over her. She stopped thinking about tomorrow, stopped pushing the bird, and simply observed. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, the bird's wings stretched wider, its pecking slowed, and it looked at her with a sudden, quiet trust. With a deep breath, Zuri opened the cage door. The bird hesitated, then leapt into the air with a flash of brilliance. It circled above her head, singing a song so pure that tears stung Zuri's eyes. She felt a surge of joy, unconnected to achievement, recognition, or anything external, pure, immediate happiness. The old woman's voice broke through her awe. You see, happiness is not in the chasing. It is in the waiting, in the observing, in the surrender to the present. Those who rush will always miss the song of life. Zuri clutched the wooden drum to her chest, feeling it resonate with her own heartbeat.
She realized
seemed
that
both familiar and strangely new. Zuri awoke to the chorus of early morning street vendors, the distant hum of traffic, and the scent of freshly baked bread from the corner bakery. But she no longer felt burdened by the noise. Instead, she felt attuned to it, a part of the city's pulse rather than merely an observer. She left her apartment later than usual, taking a winding route through the alleys she had once hurried past. There, she noticed small, overlooked details. A young boy carefully balancing a basket of mangoes on his head, a pair of women sharing a laugh over a spilled sack of rice, an elderly man crouched by a fire, roasting fish and nodding to the rhythm of his own song. For the first time, Zuri realized that every person, every moment carried a story, and she wanted to witness them all. It was in one such alley, narrow and tucked between two crumbling buildings, that she encountered a stranger. He was a young man, perhaps a year or two older than her, sitting cross-legged on the ground, sketching furiously in a worn notebook. His skin was deep brown, his hair tightly coiled, and his eyes, intensely focused, seemed to see beyond the surface of the world around him. "Hello," Zuri said cautiously. The man looked up, startled, then smiled, a warm, crooked smile that immediately put her at ease. "Ah, hello. You're not from around here, are you?" I I live nearby. I just notice things differently now." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Notice things? That's rare. Most people walk through this city blind, seeing only what they want to see." Zuri smiled faintly. "I'm learning to look, really look." The man's eyes lit up. "Good, then you might appreciate what I'm doing." He held up his notebook. Zuri leaned closer and saw intricate sketches of the alley, children playing, women selling produce, a dog curled up in the corner. But these weren't ordinary sketches. They were alive. Each line seemed to breathe, each shadow danced, and the colors pulsed with vibrancy. You see life in a different way," Zuri whispered, mesmerized. The stranger chuckled softly. "Some do. I sketch what others overlook. I find beauty in what they discard. But it's not easy. Most chase the future so relentlessly they forget to see the poetry in the present." Zuri felt a deep resonance with his words. "I'm learning that," she admitted. "I think I've been blind for so long." He nodded knowingly. "Then you understand. Happiness is not something to capture, it is something to witness, to nurture within yourself, and sometimes it finds you through the simplest of encounters. For hours they talked in the alley. Zuri learned that his name was Kelechi, an aspiring artist who had left university because he realized he wanted to explore the soul of Lagos rather than merely earn a degree. He showed her sketches of rooftops, street corners, and children playing in puddles, each imbued with life and wonder. Through his eyes, Zuri began to see her city as a living, breathing organism, one that offered endless opportunities for joy, creativity, and connection. As the sun began to dip, casting a golden glow over the alley, Zuri felt a quiet thrill. She realized that happiness often arrived unannounced, disguised in ordinary people, unexpected conversations, and fleeting moments of wonder. It wasn't something to chase, but something to be open to, something to embrace fully. When she finally left the alley, the city seemed brighter, more alive, as if it too had been waiting for her to notice. Zuri clutched the wooden drum the old woman had given her, feeling its rhythm echo her own heartbeat. That night, she lay in bed thinking about Kelechi and the lessons of the day. Happiness, she realized, wasn't a distant destination. It was the laughter shared between strangers, the quiet beauty of a street corner, the pulse of life itself. And for the first time, she felt a sense of excitement, not for the future she had been chasing, but for the present she was finally beginning to live. It had been 2 days since Zuri met Kelechi, and her mind still replayed their conversation in the alley. Every sketch, every shared laugh, every insight had opened a window in her soul. She walked through Lagos with new eyes, noticing not only the vibrancy of life, but also its fragility. Yet she knew the true test of her lessons was still to come. The sky darkened in the late afternoon, clouds rolling in like heavy blankets. Lagos's residents, used to sudden tropical storms, hurried to finish their errands. Zuri, clutching her wooden drum, decided to take the longer route home, wanting to absorb every detail of the city. Halfway through Belogan Market, the first raindrops fell, small, hesitant at first, then growing into a torrential downpour. The vendors scrambled to cover their stalls, shouting to one another over the roar of the storm. The streets quickly became rivers, weaving between the chaos of upturned baskets, spilled produce, and terrified animals. Zuri's heart sank. Normally, she would have panicked, focused on reaching home as fast as possible, worrying about ruined clothes and missed responsibilities. But today, something inside her shifted. She closed her eyes, felt the rain on her face, and allowed herself to exist fully in the moment. A sudden cry drew her attention. In the corner of the flooded street, a small boy clung to a stack of overturned crates, soaked to the bone. His basket of yams had fallen, and he looked terrified as the water threatened to sweep him away. Without thinking, Zuri ran to him, lifting him to safety and holding him close. His shivering body pressed against her, and she felt a surge of compassion and protectiveness that had little to do with planning for tomorrow and everything to do with the now. "Are you okay?" she shouted over the pounding rain. The boy nodded, eyes wide with fear and awe. "Thank you, Auntie," he stammered, his voice barely audible. Zuri noticed the fear and exhaustion in the eyes of others around her, street vendors trying to salvage their goods, mothers clutching children, dogs whining as they sought shelter. For the first time, she felt a deep connection to the people around her, their struggles and their resilience. Happiness was no longer just a personal feeling, it was intertwined with empathy, compassion, and presence. Kelechi appeared suddenly, drenched but smiling, carrying a bundle of sketches he had protected from the rain. "You're in the storm," he shouted, gesturing at Zuri's soaked clothes. "I am," she replied, laughing through the downpour, "and it feels alive. Terrifying, yes, but alive. I'm finally living it." The two of them worked together, helping vendors secure their stalls and rescuing stray animals from the rising water. Every act, every moment demanded full attention, patience, and presence. For the first time, Zuri experienced the paradox she had read about in the letter and seen in the alley. Happiness was not the absence of difficulty, but the full immersion in life, even its storms. By the time the rain subsided, Lagos shimmered under the setting sun, streets glistening with puddles reflecting the city's colors. Zuri, exhausted but exhilarated, looked around and realized she had never felt more connected, not just to the present, but to the heartbeat of her city and its people. That night, lying in her bed, she reflected on the day. She had been tested not by exams, achievements, or plans, but by life itself, and in rising to meet it, she had discovered a joy that no future reward could match. Happiness, she understood now, wasn't waiting somewhere else. It was here, in every breath, every act, and every heartbeat. The morning sun filtered through Zuri's window, casting warm streaks of light across her small, cluttered room. The events of the storm still lingered in her mind. The boy she had saved, the vendors she had helped, the adrenaline and the joy of living fully in the present. For the first time, she woke up without an agenda dominated by a distant future. Today, she wanted to explore the beauty in ordinary life. As she stepped into the bustling streets of Lagos, she noticed the rhythm of the city as if seeing it for the first time. Every detail felt vibrant: the clatter of frying pans at roadside food stalls, the chatter of neighbors greeting each other, and even the scent of damp earth from yesterday's rain. Zuri realized that the world itself seemed to be alive, breathing alongside her, waiting to be noticed. She wandered through the alleys where she had first met Kelechi, her eyes drawn to small, almost imperceptible wonders. A boy balanced a tray of oranges on his head with astonishing skill, laughing as he dodged the puddles. A stray cat rubbing against her leg seemed to share in the energy of life around her. Zuri paused at a stall selling small clay pots. The vendor, an elderly man with silver hands, running her fingers over the smooth curves and imperfections. In that small object, she felt a connection to the hands that had shaped it, to the earth that had birthed it, and to the countless lives it would touch. She realized that miracles didn't always roar, they often whispered in quiet, unexpected moments. She continued walking and came across a small group of children playing a game with a tattered ball. Their laughter rang out, unself-conscious and free. Zuri stopped to watch, mesmerized by their joy. She remembered the old woman's words about noticing life, and she understood now that this was precisely what she had been missing, the richness of small, everyday moments. Later that afternoon, she met Kelechi again in the alley. He was sketching quietly, capturing the ordinary scenes of the street with a depth that made them extraordinary. Zuri watched him work, noticing the care in each line, the reverence in his gaze for life's subtleties. "You've changed," he said, looking up. "There's a light in your eyes I didn't see before." "I think I'm beginning to see things differently," Zuri admitted. "I've been chasing the future for so long that I forgot to live now. But today feels alive." Kelechi smiled. "That's the beginning. Happiness is not in tomorrow, it's in noticing, appreciating, and participating in the present, in the ordinary." As the sun set over Lagos, casting golden reflections on the puddle-strewn streets, Zuri realized that happiness was no longer an abstract goal. It was here, in every laugh, every glance, every small act of life. And as she returned home, she felt a sense of peace she had never known, a quiet assurance that she was finally learning the art of living fully in the present. The morning air in Lagos was heavy with humidity, yet Zuri felt a lightness in her step. The lessons of the storm, the old woman's guidance, and Kalexi's sketches had opened a new doorway in her heart. She had begun to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, to feel the rhythm of life in every glance, every sound, every breath. But the city, as vibrant as it was, had its shadows, and Zuri would soon realize that happiness in the present was not only about noticing beauty, it was also about confronting the pain she had long avoided. As she walked toward the market, her thoughts drifted to her childhood. Memories she had long buried began to surface. The nights her parents argued softly so she wouldn't wake, the hunger she sometimes endured in silence, the loneliness she had felt despite being surrounded by family. She had spent years imagining that happiness could only come when these shadows were gone, when she had a perfect home, a stable job, and recognition from the world. But now, those old fears felt different. Instead of running from them, she felt an urge to face them, to see them clearly in the light of the present. At the edge of the market, she noticed a small, shabby bookstore she had never entered before. Its wooden sign was faded, the windows dusty, but a faint warmth emanated from inside. Something drew her in. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and ink, comforting and rich. Books were stacked haphazardly along the walls, and a small bell jingled as she stepped in. "Ah, welcome," a gentle voice said. Zuri looked up to see an elderly man with kind eyes and a faint smile. "I seem someone searching for answers." I'm not sure," Zuri admitted, feeling exposed in a way she rarely allowed herself. "I've been trying to understand happiness." The man nodded knowingly and handed her a thin, worn journal. "Perhaps these pages will help. They contain stories of people who discovered joy not by chasing the future, but by facing their past and embracing the present." Zuri took the journal and began to read. Each story resonated with her. A widow who found laughter in caring for stray animals, a young boy who discovered courage by helping his family despite poverty, a woman who healed old wounds by forgiving those who had hurt her. She realized that happiness was not the absence of pain, but the willingness to acknowledge it while still finding light in the now. Hours passed unnoticed. When she finally looked up, the sun had begun to dip, casting long shadows across the dusty floors. Zuri felt tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of release. She had been carrying the weight of the past for too long, believing that it would prevent her from being happy. But in the quiet of the bookstore, surrounded by stories of resilience and grace, she understood that the past was not a prison, it was a teacher, and the present was her chance to apply its lessons. Walking home that evening, she felt lighter, freer. The sounds of Lagos, the chatter, the drums, the laughter, felt like a symphony welcoming her into life. Zuri realized that happiness was no longer a distant goal to be earned. It was here, waiting to be embraced, even in the shadows of her past. As she lay in bed that night, journal clutched to her chest, she whispered to herself, "I see it now. Happiness is not waiting for tomorrow. It grows when we live, love, and notice the world around us today." The morning air in Lagos rose slowly under a sky streaked with pink and orange. Zuri felt the familiar hum of the city's rhythm beneath her feet, the vendors calling out, the children laughing, the motorcycles weaving through traffic. But today, a sense of anticipation filled her. She had begun to live in the present, embracing its joys and subtleties, yet she sensed that life was about to test how deeply she had internalized these lessons. As she walked toward the market, she noticed a commotion near one of the busy food stalls. A young man, flustered and red-faced, was accusing a vendor of shortchanging him. The vendor, a frail woman with worn hands, protested her innocence, but the man's anger was loud and aggressive. Zuri instinctively moved closer, drawn not by curiosity, but by a need to witness what was happening.
She noticed the tension in the crowd.
Some onlookers seemed ready to take sides, while others simply watched, unwilling to intervene. Zuri felt her pulse quicken, not with fear, but with awareness. This was a moment demanding presence, courage, and clarity. "Stop," she called, stepping between the two. Both parties paused, startled by her voice. "Please, calm down. Let's see what really happened." The man looked at her skeptically, his face tight with frustration. "She stole from me," he insisted. The vendor's hands shook as she held out a small bundle of coins. "I gave him the correct amount," she pleaded. Zuri took a deep breath and knelt beside the vendor, counting the coins herself. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal, and she focused entirely on the present, every coin, every sound, every movement. She realized that her rush to the future, her ambition, her studies, her plans, had not prepared her for moments like this, when clarity and integrity required complete immersion in the present. After a moment, she looked up. "The vendor is correct. You received the right amount," she said firmly, handing the coins back. The man's face turned red with embarrassment. I'm sorry," he muttered, retreating into the crowd. The vendor exhaled shakily, relief flooding her features. Zuri felt an unexpected wave of satisfaction. Not pride in herself, but a deep, quiet joy that arose from doing what was right in the moment, without calculation or expectation. Integrity, she realized, was a form of presence. It demanded awareness, patience, and courage, all qualities she had been cultivating. Later, walking home through the bustling streets, she reflected on the encounter. The present was not only about noticing beauty and small miracles, it was also about responsibility, honesty, and courage. Happiness was intertwined with these acts, flowing from living fully and rightly in each moment. That evening, she met Kelechi near the alley. He handed her a sketch, a drawing of Zuri standing between the man and the vendor, calm and resolute, her presence creating harmony amidst chaos. She smiled, seeing herself through his eyes, not perfect, but aware, engaged, and alive in the moment. As she lay in bed, the city's sounds drifting through her window, she whispered to herself, "Happiness is not a reward. It is the life I choose in each moment, even when it is difficult, even when it challenges me." The morning sun spilled across Lagos in streaks of gold and crimson, casting long shadows over the bustling streets. Zuri woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The lessons she had learned, the storm, the alley, the bookstore, and the moral test, had all begun to crystallize into an understanding that life itself was a canvas. The present was not only to be noticed, but also to be shaped, painted, and celebrated. Today, she decided to meet Kelechi near the alley, where he had introduced her to the vibrant world of street sketches. When she arrived, he was already drawing, his hands moving with a precision and fluidity that seemed effortless. Zuri watched for a moment, captivated by the way his pencil captured motion, emotion, and light. "You've been practicing," Kelechi said, looking up and smiling. "Your eyes have changed. You see more than before." "I think I want to try," Zuri replied, her voice tinged with excitement. She picked up a piece of charcoal he offered and tentatively began to sketch. At first, her lines were hesitant, trembling with self-doubt. But as she focused, letting her attention rest fully in the present, something remarkable happened. The pencil seemed to move on its own, guided by her awareness and presence. She drew the bustling alley, the children playing, the stray dogs weaving through the crowd, the vendors shouting prices. Each line, each curve carried life. Her fingers and her mind became instruments, translating what she noticed in the present into art. Kelechi watched silently, occasionally offering gentle guidance. "Art is not just about skill," he said. "It's about attention. It's about seeing what most people overlook. When you are fully present, the world reveals its magic to you." Hours passed unnoticed. Zuri's confidence grew with each stroke, her laughter mingling with the ambient sounds of Lagos, the clatter of stalls, the chatter of neighbors, the distant hum of traffic. She realized that creativity was not merely a pastime, it was a form of mindfulness, a bridge between seeing and feeling, noticing and participating. As the sun dipped low, casting long, warm shadows across the alley, Zuri stepped back from her drawing. She felt a surge of joy, not tied to recognition or achievement, but to the pure act of creation. Her sketch, though simple and imperfect, radiated life. In that moment, she understood something profound. Happiness was not just about observing the present, it was about contributing to it, shaping it, and leaving a trace of herself in the world. Kelechi handed her a small, folded paper. "This is yours," he said, "a reminder that every moment you spend creating, loving, noticing, you are living fully." Zuri opened it to find a tiny sketch of herself, eyes wide and radiant, surrounded by the swirling energy of life in Lagos. Walking home that evening, she clutched her drawing and the gift, feeling the city pulse around her. Happiness, she realized, was multi-layered. It was noticing, it was creating, it was sharing. It was not a distant prize, but a lived experience, alive in every heartbeat, every breath, every movement. As she lay in bed, her thoughts alive with images and possibilities, Zuri whispered to herself, "I am beginning to see. Life is art. Happiness is living it, moment by moment, with awareness and love." The morning sun filtered through the narrow streets of Lagos, casting long shadows over the bustling city. Zuri walked with a lightness in her step, her wooden drum tucked under her arm, a bundle of sketches from Kelechi clutched in her other hand. She had begun to embrace life fully in the present, noticing beauty in the mundane, participating in acts of kindness, and expressing herself through creativity. Yet an old whisper lingered in her mind, the need for achievement, the pull of the future she had spent years chasing. School had always been a source of pride for Zuri, a ladder toward the life she imagined she was destined for. Today, she received a notice pinned on the bulletin board, a citywide competition for young inventors and entrepreneurs. The prize was substantial, a scholarship, mentorship, and recognition across Lagos. Her heart leapt. Here was the future calling again, urgent and glittering. Zuri felt a familiar rush of excitement and anxiety. Part of her wanted to dive headfirst into the competition, to pour her energy into achieving the prize she had always imagined would bring happiness. But another part of her, the part awakened by the old woman, Kelechi, and the bookstore, hesitated. She remembered the lessons of presence, patience, and engagement. Could she pursue her ambitions without losing sight of the beauty and joy of the present? Determined to find balance, Zuri decided to spend the morning in the market before making any decisions. The streets were alive with energy, vendors haggling playfully, children darting between stalls, the scent of roasted plantains mingling with fresh spices. She paused at each stall, noticing the rhythm of life, the laughter, the intricate details she had once overlooked. Kelechi appeared beside her, carrying his sketchbook. "You look distracted," he said, observing the tension in her posture. "I need to enter a competition. It could change my future, but I'm afraid if I chase it too hard, I'll lose what I've learned about the present." He smiled knowingly. The future and the present aren't enemies. Ambition can coexist with awareness. The key is how you approach it. If you chase blindly, you miss life. If you embrace the journey with attention, every step becomes a source of joy. Encouraged by his words, Zuri began to brainstorm ideas for the competition. She sketched designs that incorporated lessons she had learned about noticing details, helping her community, and celebrating life in small, meaningful ways. She spoke to vendors, asked children about their dreams, and observed the flow of the market, letting inspiration arise naturally rather than forcing it. By evening, she had a concept she loved, a project that was not only innovative but deeply connected to the present, a mobile community garden that could bring greenery, learning, and joy to neighborhoods, designed with the needs and voices of those she had observed. Zuri felt a surge of satisfaction, knowing she had integrated ambition with awareness, achievement with presence. Walking home that evening, the golden light of sunset glinting off the rooftops, Zuri realized something profound. Happiness did not require abandoning ambition. It required approaching life with mindfulness, casting pale gold streaks across the bustling city. But Zuri awoke with a sense of unease. Yesterday's excitement about the citywide competition had carried her through the day with enthusiasm, but today doubt crept in like a shadow. What if her project wasn't good enough? What if her ideas, born from noticing the beauty and needs around her, weren't seen as valuable by others? Determined to face her worries, she headed to the community center to refine her sketches and plans. The market streets, alive with energy, felt unusually heavy. Vendors scolded each other over minor mistakes, children quarreled over games, and stray dogs barked insistently at every passerby. Normally, these sights might have irritated her, but today she observed calmly, noting that even chaos held rhythm and life. Her attention returned to her project, and she meticulously worked on the mobile community garden design, carefully considering materials, logistics, and sustainability. Hours passed unnoticed, but just as she was about to submit her preliminary plan, a notice arrived. The deadline had been moved forward unexpectedly. Panic surged through her. She realized she didn't have enough time to perfect her designs, gather community input, or refine her presentation. Her chest tightened. For a moment, she felt the familiar pull of old habits, the compulsion to panic, to rush, to let the future dominate her thoughts entirely. But she remembered the lessons she had learned from the old woman, Kalechi, and the bookstore: presence, patience, and acceptance. Taking a deep breath, Zuri closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel the tension fully. She noticed the rapid beating of her heart, the tightness in her shoulders, and the rise and fall of her breath. She let it be without judgment, allowing herself to exist in that exact moment. Then she acted, not in fear, but in clarity. She simplified her design, focusing on what was most impactful and meaningful. She incorporated the sketches and ideas she had collected from the children and vendors over the past week. Though imperfect, her submission carried her intention, her awareness, and her care. As she walked to the submission office, the rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, soaking the streets and washing the dust into little rivers. Instead of panicking, Zuri smiled, feeling the rain on her face. She had no control over the competition's timeline, no power over the judges' decisions, and yet she was fully alive in this moment, engaged with what she could do. When she finally submitted her project, a sense of calm settled over her. The outcome was uncertain, but she realized that true happiness did not depend on winning or being recognized. It came from doing her best in the present, from acting with intention, and from embracing the journey rather than fixating on the destination. That night, she lay in bed, the rain pattering softly against the window. She whispered to herself, "Setbacks are not failures. They are reminders to stay present, to act with care, and to find joy in what I can do now." The morning sun spilled across Lagos, casting the streets in hues of gold and amber. Zuri awoke with a quiet anticipation, a gentle thrill humming through her chest. Yesterday's submission of her project still lingered in her mind, but instead of worry, she felt a sense of calm confidence. She had acted with intention, embraced the present, and done her best. The outcome, whatever it might be, no longer held dominion over her happiness. Walking toward the community center, she noticed the familiar sights of the market. The vendors shouting their prices, children darting between stalls, stray cats weaving through the crowd. Each sound, each movement seemed amplified in its beauty. Today, Lagos felt alive in a way that mirrored the pulse in her own heart. As she entered the center, she was greeted by a small crowd of children and neighbors. Then came a familiar voice, brimming with excitement. "Zuri, you've won first place!" Her heart skipped a beat. I won?" she asked, barely believing it. The coordinator, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, handed Zuri a certificate and a small scholarship award. "Your project, your ideas, your sketches, and most importantly, your connection to the community stood out above all. You didn't just design a project, you created hope, inspiration, and joy." Zuri felt a swell of emotions, but amidst the elation, she noticed something profound. The happiness she felt was not solely from recognition. It was rooted in the process, in the presence she had cultivated throughout the journey. She remembered the storm, the alley, the bookstore, the moral test, and the sketches with Kelechi. Each had taught her to be present, to notice life, and to act with intention. Kelechi appeared beside her, sketchbook in hand. "I told you," he said with a smile, "happiness grows when you live fully in the moment, not when you chase the future blindly." Zuri looked around at the children, the vendors, the neighbors who had supported her, and felt her heart swell. The triumph was shared, not just personal. Her joy resonated through the community, touching lives, inspiring smiles, and creating ripples of happiness that extended far beyond her own experience. Later that afternoon, she walked through the market with her wooden drum under her arm, reflecting on the journey. The present, she realized, was a gift that could never be postponed. Triumph, success, and recognition were fleeting, but the act of living fully, attentively, and compassionately, the small victories of presence, was enduring. As the sun set over Lagos, casting golden reflections on puddle-strewn streets, Zuri whispered to herself, "I thought happiness was in the future, in achievements yet to come, but it has been here all along, in every breath, every act, every connection I have made today." And for the first time in her life, she felt complete, not because the world had acknowledged her, but because she had finally acknowledged life itself. The morning sun rose slowly over Lagos, casting a warm glow across the bustling streets. Zuri felt a sense of anticipation in the air, not for herself, but for the lives she might touch today. The victory of the competition had brought joy, but she realized that true presence demanded engagement beyond her personal experiences. Happiness, she understood, was magnified when shared and extended with empathy to others. As she walked toward the community center, she noticed a small crowd gathered near a corner of the street. Curiosity mixed with concern as she approached. There she saw a young boy, no older than 10, sitting on the curb, tears streaming down his cheeks. His school bag lay open beside him, its contents scattered across the pavement. "What happened?" Zuri asked gently, kneeling beside him. They took my lunch money," he said between sobs, pointing at a group of older boys laughing as they ran away. "And I don't know how to get home without it." Zuri's heart clenched. Normally, she might have felt anger or frustration, or rushed to solve the problem quickly and move on. But today, she stopped and breathed, bringing herself fully into the moment. The boy's fear and vulnerability were real and urgent, and the present demanded her attention. "Don't worry," she said softly, reaching into her own bag. "We'll figure this out together." She offered him some coins for lunch, then took his hand and guided him through the crowded streets, speaking to him calmly, sharing words of encouragement, and listening to his story. As they walked, Zuri noticed the older boys from a distance, still laughing, oblivious to the world around them. Rather than reacting with anger, she chose to focus on the boy in front of her, teaching him to be aware of his surroundings and cautious without fear. She realized that presence included patience, compassion, and guidance, not just observation. At the community center, she helped the boy gather his belongings, reorganize his books, and even talk to the other children about sharing and looking out for one another. The boy's tears gave way to shy smiles, and Zuri felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that happiness multiplied when she acted with empathy, helping others navigate life's small storms while remaining present herself. Later, as she walked home through the fading sunlight, Zuri reflected on the day. Life's challenges were not only opportunities for personal growth, they were invitations to extend understanding and joy to others. She clutched her wooden drum tightly, feeling its steady rhythm resonate with her heartbeat, a reminder that presence was active, relational, and alive. That night, as Legos hummed softly outside her window, Zuri whispered to herself, "Happiness is not only for me, it is for everyone I touch, every life I notice, every moment I engage with
lazily
fully."
across Lagos, illuminating the bustling streets and casting golden reflections on puddles from the recent rain. Zuri stepped out into the city, her wooden drum tucked under her arm and her sketchbook in hand, feeling a quiet anticipation. The previous day's lessons, helping the young boy and practicing empathy, had deepened her understanding of presence, yet today something told her that gratitude awaited as her next teacher. As she walked through the market, she noticed details she had once overlooked: the way a vendor carefully arranged ripe tomatoes, the children chasing a rolling tire with unrestrained laughter, the old woman selling bread and nodding at each passerby. Each small act, each fleeting moment felt connected in a delicate web of life, vibrating with a silent energy she had only begun to recognize. Zuri paused at a flower stall, inhaling the scent of hibiscus and marigolds. The vendor, an elderly man with a gentle smile, noticed her pause. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Even if no one buys, the flowers still bloom, they still bring joy." Zuri nodded, realizing the wisdom in his words. Gratitude, she thought, was not about waiting for gifts or recognition. It was about noticing the life, care, and effort woven into every small corner of the world. Her attention shifted to a small stray puppy struggling to climb onto a pile of crates. Without hesitation, she gently lifted it, brushing off the dirt and handing it to a young boy nearby. The boy beamed, hugging the tiny creature with delight. Zuri felt a warmth spread through her chest. Each act of noticing and giving, even something as small as helping a puppy, was a thread in the tapestry of life, and gratitude was the thread that made it shine. Later, she wandered into the alley where she had first met Kelechi. He was sketching quietly, his hands moving with steady precision. "You look thoughtful," he said, noticing her pause. "I'm realizing how connected everything is," Zuri replied. "Every action, every small kindness, every life I notice, they all matter. I feel grateful for even the smallest things." Kelechi smiled, sketching a delicate line in his book. "That's the magic. Gratitude turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. It shows us that life is not only happening to us, but through us, connecting us to everyone and everything around us." Zuri spent the afternoon helping Kelechi document the life of the alley, children playing, vendors laughing, and stray animals weaving through the crowd. She realized that every detail she had once ignored was now part of a living, breathing story, one that pulsed with gratitude, presence, and joy. As the sun set, casting fiery hues across the Lagos skyline, Zuri walked home, clutching her drum and sketchbook. She whispered to herself, "Happiness has been here all along. Every moment, every life, every heartbeat is a gift. I only needed to notice, to be grateful, to truly live." That night, she drifted to sleep with a heart full of gratitude, understanding that happiness was not a destination or a reward. It was the recognition of life's countless interconnected blessings, woven invisibly through each present moment. The morning in Lagos was soft and golden, with the humid air carrying the scent of wet earth and spices from the street vendors. Zuri woke with a lightness she had grown accustomed to, a sense of connection to the city, to the people around her, and to the rhythm of life itself. Yet today, life would teach her that presence and happiness were not only about noticing joy, but also about embracing impermanence. As she made her way to the alley to meet Kelechi, she noticed a crowd gathered near the edge of the market. Curious, she pushed through and saw a small, modest stall she had visited often, run by an elderly woman who sold handmade beads and bracelets, now emptied and overturned. The woman, hunched and trembling, clutched her chest and wept. Zuri's heart clenched. She approached cautiously. "What happened?" she asked softly. "They stole everything," the woman said, her voice breaking. "All my beads, all my earnings. I have nothing left." Zuri felt a rush of anger, sorrow, and helplessness, emotions she had rarely allowed herself to feel fully. But she remembered the lessons she had been learning: presence, patience, and engagement with life as it was, not as she wished it to be. She knelt beside the woman, taking her hands gently. "I'm here. You're not alone. Let's see how we can help." Together, they gathered what little remained and spoke with neighbors, seeking small donations, spare beads, and the kindness of strangers. Children offered their savings, vendors lent coins, and even Kelechi joined with sketches he had sold to contribute. By the afternoon, the stall had been partially restored, though it was far from its former glory. Zuri noticed that despite the loss, the woman smiled through her tears. "You've reminded me that even when we lose things, we can find presence and joy in what remains and in the kindness of others," she said softly. Zuri sat quietly, reflecting on the lesson. Life was impermanent. Joy could be interrupted, possessions could be lost, people could leave, but the present moment, the acts of care and connection remained within reach. Happiness was not about holding on to permanence or control. It was about embracing life fully, even amidst uncertainty and grief. Later, as she walked home through the golden streets of Lagos, she observed children playing with makeshift toys, vendors laughing despite meager earnings, and stray animals navigating puddles with grace. Each moment seemed to pulse with life's resilience. She realized that impermanence did not diminish beauty, it intensified it, reminding her to notice, to love, and to be fully present. That night, lying in her bed, Zuri whispered to herself, "Life changes, people change, things are lost, yet still here I am, alive, noticing, loving, and present. Happiness is not in holding on, it is in letting life flow through me, moment by moment." The sun rose over Lagos, scattering golden light across the city streets, and Zuri felt a new sense of purpose stirring in her heart. The lessons of presence, empathy, gratitude, and impermanence had already transformed her life, and now she began to sense that true fulfillment was not only about noticing and living fully for herself, it was about guiding others to see the beauty and possibility in their own lives. That morning, she returned to the community center, where children were gathered for their daily lessons and activities. She noticed a small group huddled together, whispering anxiously. Curious, she approached and saw a small boy struggling to read, his eyes downcast, shame flickering across his face. "Hello," Zuri said softly, crouching to meet him at eye level. "What are you working on?" I can't read," the boy admitted, his voice barely audible. "Everyone else is faster. I'll never catch up." Zuri felt her chest tighten, recalling the many moments in her own life when she had doubted herself and deferred happiness to some distant future. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the present. "Learning isn't a race," she said gently. "It's about taking one step at a time, noticing what you understand, and being patient with yourself." Over the next few hours, Zuri sat with the boy, guiding him through letters, words, and sentences. She celebrated small victories with him, the correct pronunciation of a difficult word, the recognition of a familiar phrase, and watched his confidence grow. Each smile, each flicker of understanding filled her with a joy deeper than any achievement or recognition. Kelechi arrived later, carrying his sketchbook, and observed Zuri as she mentored the boy. "You're doing something important here," he said. "Happiness isn't only about living fully, it's about lighting the way for others, helping them see the present as a place of possibility and joy." Zuri nodded, realizing the truth in his words. Mentorship, she discovered, was not just instruction, it was presence. It was giving attention, offering encouragement, and celebrating progress in the moment rather than focusing on distant outcomes. By helping others notice life's beauty and their own potential, she was deepening her own understanding of joy. The boy's progress, small but steady, reminded Zuri of her own journey. She remembered the old woman's alley, Kelechi's sketches, the stolen beads, and the community's resilience. Each moment of guidance, each act of attention was a thread weaving the tapestry of life, connecting past, present, and future in ways she had only begun to grasp. As the sun set that evening, the golden glow of sunset reflecting on the puddles of Lagos, Zuri walked home, clutching her drum and sketchbook. She whispered to herself, "Happiness grows when I share it. Presence multiplies when it reaches beyond myself. By guiding others, I see life more clearly, and I find joy in every step along
softly
the way."
over Lagos, illuminating the vibrant streets and filling the air with energy. Zuri woke feeling unusually fatigued. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of growth, learning, and engagement. Storms weathered, kindness shared, sketches drawn, lessons absorbed, and mentorship given. Yet today, her body reminded her that even the most dedicated heart needed rest. Determined not to ignore her own needs, Zuri began her morning with a quiet ritual. She sat on the edge of her small porch, eyes closed, listening to the hum of the city, the distant laughter of children, the clatter of market stalls, the soft rustle of palm fronds in the breeze. She breathed deeply, letting the rhythm of Lagos sync with the rhythm of her heart. Presence, she reminded herself, was not only about action, it was also about noticing and nurturing herself. Her day began as usual, heading toward the community center to guide the children with their studies and projects. Upon arrival, she found the room buzzing with excitement. Several children had prepared small projects to showcase what they had learned under her guidance. Their energy was contagious, but Zuri felt a twinge of fatigue tugging at her focus. As she helped the children, she noticed herself becoming impatient, her energy waning. Normally, she would have pushed through, believing that self-sacrifice was noble and that her happiness depended solely on serving others. But today, she paused and reflected. The lessons she had learned, presence, empathy, gratitude, impermanence, mentorship, and self-care, applied to herself as much as to others. Taking a small step back, she invited a group of older children to lead some activities, gently supervising while allowing herself to rest and recharge. She encouraged them to notice details, share stories, and celebrate small victories among themselves. Slowly, the room's energy balanced, her heart lighter as she realized that presence was not about endless giving. It was about sustainable engagement, where care for oneself allowed one to care more fully for others. Kelechi arrived in the afternoon, sketchbook in hand, and observed Zuri quietly. "You've grown," he said softly. "You understand now that presence and happiness require balance. Giving without rest diminishes joy. Care for yourself as you care for others, and life flows more fully." Zuri nodded, feeling a quiet sense of pride, not in achievement, but in awareness. By allowing herself to rest while nurturing others, she was embodying the lessons she had learned, that true happiness thrives in balance, not in extremes. As the sun set, casting warm orange and pink hues across Lagos, Zuri walked home slowly, appreciating the golden reflections on the puddles and the laughter of children echoing through the streets. Clutching her drum and sketches, she whispered softly, I can give fully, love fully, and still care for myself. Happiness grows when I honor both the world and my own heart in the present. The morning sun rose over Lagos, spilling a warm, amber glow over the bustling city. Zuri woke feeling a mixture of calm and curiosity. She had navigated so many lessons: presence, empathy, gratitude, impermanence, mentorship, and self-care. But deep within her, a quiet tension lingered. Memories of past hurts and betrayals, moments she had carried silently for years, tugged at her heart. Today, she felt ready to face them. As she walked through the crowded streets, she noticed a vendor arguing with a delivery boy. The boy had dropped a basket of produce, scattering fruits and vegetables across the dusty street. Normally, Zuri might have rushed past or quietly judged one side, but today she stopped, watching the exchange closely. She realized that anger, like sorrow, was a chain binding both the giver and the receiver, and freedom came only when it was released. Later, Zuri sat under a mango tree near the alley, the golden sunlight filtering through the leaves. She thought of people from her past, friends who had betrayed her trust, classmates who had mocked her, moments when she had felt unseen and unvalued. Each memory stirred a flicker of pain, but instead of letting it dominate her, she breathed deeply and reminded herself of the lessons she had learned. Happiness exists in the present, not in clinging to past grievances. Slowly, deliberately, she whispered, "I forgive you. I release the anger, the hurt, and the weight I've carried. I choose to live fully now, free from the chains of yesterday." She felt an unfamiliar lightness in her chest, as though the sun itself had entered her heart. As she walked back to the community center, she encountered an old classmate who had once mocked her, now struggling to carry heavy baskets from a market stall. The instinct for judgment flickered in Zuri's mind, but she paused and smiled instead. She approached him and offered to help. He looked surprised, a shadow of guilt crossing his face. "Thank you," he said softly, unsure how to respond. Zuri realized then that forgiveness was not about condoning past actions, it was about freeing herself. By letting go of resentment, she created space for joy, presence, and connection. She noticed the laughter of children playing nearby, the chatter of vendors, and the warm sunlight on her skin. Life, vibrant and unbounded, flowed through her in the present moment. That evening, as she lay in bed, clutching her drum and sketches, she whispered to herself, "Happiness is freedom. Freedom is presence. By forgiving, I am lighter, fuller, and more alive than ever. The present is mine to embrace." The morning sun rose over Lagos, painting the city in soft golden hues. Zuri woke feeling restless. Her days had been full of lessons, triumphs, and discoveries, but she realized that she still carried a quiet impatience. She wanted to do more, help more, create more, but life's pace, as vibrant as it was, didn't always match her desires. As she walked through the bustling streets, she noticed a small queue of people waiting patiently at a food stall. The vendor moved slowly, carefully weighing and wrapping each item. Some in the line tapped their feet in frustration, but others smiled, chatted, and waited. Zuri paused, observing the rhythm. Life, she realized, had its own timing. Later, at the community center, she gathered the children for an activity involving growing small plants. Excitedly, she handed each child a seed, explaining that it would take time, sunlight, and care for it to grow. Some children groaned, eager to see immediate results. "I want my plant to grow today," one exclaimed. Zuri smiled, kneeling beside the child. Explained that life is like this seed. We can water it, give it care, and notice it every day, but it will grow in its own time. Patience allows us to honor the process rather than rushing for an outcome. As the children planted their seeds and tended them with care, Zuri reflected on her own journey.
Every lesson, the storm, the alley, Kelechi's sketches, the bookstore, the community projects, had unfolded gradually, each moment building upon the last. She had learned to notice, to give, to forgive, to mentor, and to care. Each step required patience. Each revelation had its own timing. That afternoon, while walking through the streets, she saw a flower blooming amidst cracks in the concrete, a delicate hibiscus unnoticed by most. She paused, marveling at its persistence and timing. Life, she realized, did not follow her schedule. It unfolded naturally, in its own grace. Later, she met Kelechi in the alley. He handed her a new sketch, a delicate scene of a flower growing through pavement cracks, children tending plants, and people moving in harmony with the world around them. Patience, he said softly, teaches us to notice life as it comes, to trust the process, and to find joy in every unfolding moment. That evening, as Lagos glowed with the last light of sunset, Zuri walked slowly home, savoring every sound, every scent, every sensation. She whispered to herself, "Happiness is not rushing. Life unfolds perfectly, moment by moment. Patience lets me notice, appreciate, and live fully." The morning sun painted Lagos in brilliant gold, reflecting off puddles left from the night's rain. Zuri woke with a flitter of anxiety. Today, she had agreed to accompany Kelechi to a crowded art fair downtown, where he was displaying his work to the first time to a larger audience. The thought of so many strangers observing, judging, and commenting on his sketches filled her chest with tension. She had learned to live in the present, but fear still lingered in certain quarters of her mind. As she made her way through the busy streets, she noticed a young boy balancing precariously on a wooden crate, trying to reach a mango hanging from a tree. She paused, observing him carefully, realizing that courage was not absence of fear, but acting despite it. The boy wobbled, teetered, and nearly fell, but he caught himself and reached the fruit. In that moment, Zuri felt a spark within her.
The crowd buzzed with excitement and scrutiny. Zuri felt her heartbeat quicken, her palms sweating. Kelechi glanced at her, sensing her unease. "Remember," he whispered, "presence isn't just noticing beauty, it's noticing yourself, your fear, and still choosing to act." Taking a deep breath, Zuri stepped forward, focusing on the immediate moment rather than the intimidating crowd. She observed Kelechi's work, the delicate lines, the life captured in each sketch, and allowed herself to simply appreciate it, free from judgment or expectation. The fear remained, but it became a companion rather than a barrier. As strangers approached, commenting on Kelechi's work, Zuri smiled, answering questions with calm clarity. She noticed their expressions, the warmth in some eyes, the curiosity in others, and allowed herself to feel the shared joy in witnessing creativity. Her fear persisted at the edges of her mind, but it no longer controlled her. By the afternoon, Kelechi's sketches had drawn admiration, and several pieces were sold to eager buyers. Zuri felt a deep sense of pride, not in the outcome, but in the act of being present, courageous, and fully engaged despite fear. She realized that courage, like happiness, exists in the moment. It is a choice to participate in life fully, even when the unknown looms. As she walked home through the fading light of Lagos, she reflected on the lesson. Fear was not an enemy, it was a signal, a call to focus, act, and notice life with heightened awareness. She whispered softly, "Happiness and courage live together. By embracing fear and staying present, I am alive, aware, and free." That night, as she lay in bed, Zuri felt her heart steady, her mind quiet, and a profound sense of empowerment. For the first time, she understood that true bravery was inseparable from presence, and that living fully in the moment was the ultimate act of courage.
The morning sun spilled over Lagos in streaks of amber and gold, and Zuri felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her journey through presence, empathy, forgiveness, patience, and courage had given her clarity. True happiness was not merely a personal experience, it was amplified when shared through acts of service. Today, she intended to test this truth in the heart of her community. She arrived at the community center early, greeted by the familiar chorus of children's laughter and the chatter of vendors preparing for the day. Zuri carried baskets of fruits and vegetables she had purchased from the market, intending to distribute them among the families who often struggled to afford fresh food. Her chest swelled with a quiet joy, not from recognition, but from the act itself. The children helped eagerly, their eyes wide with curiosity and excitement as they learned to measure, sort, and share the produce. Zuri guided them gently, noticing each small action, the careful handing of a mango, the polite offering of a tomato, the shy smile exchanged between two neighbors. Each moment was a reminder that happiness could be cultivated through attention, gratitude, and participation. An elderly woman approached, clutching her hands together. "You remind me of the young girl I once knew," she said softly. "Thank you for caring." Zuri's heart warmed. She realized that joy and gratitude flowed like ripples through a pond, touching people in ways she could not always see. Every act of service planted a seed, creating unseen but profound impacts. Kelechi arrived, sketchbook in hand, and began capturing the scene, children laughing, neighbors exchanging smiles, and Zuri guiding with care. "You've grown," he said quietly. "You understand now that happiness is a living thing. It multiplies when it flows outward through service and attention." Zuri nodded, her eyes following a little girl who had quietly placed a bundle of vegetables at her neighbor's doorstep. It was a small gesture, unnoticed by many, yet it embodied everything Zuri had learned: presence, compassion, gratitude, and generosity. Service, she realized, was not an obligation, it was an invitation to live fully and notice life in all its dimensions. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting golden reflections across Lagos, Zuri walked home with a deep sense of fulfillment. She clutched her drum and sketches close, reflecting on the day's experiences. Happiness, she understood, was not waiting for accolades or milestones. It was alive in the act of noticing, participating, and giving. That night, as she lay in bed, she whispered softly to herself, "The present is full of opportunities to serve, to love, and to notice. Happiness grows when I pour it into the world, and gratitude becomes the light that guides me through every moment." The morning sun rose over Lagos, illuminating the streets with a soft golden light. Zuri awoke feeling energized, her mind alive with possibilities. She had grown so much through the past weeks, embracing presence, gratitude, patience, courage, and service. Yet today, life presented her with a challenge that would test one of her most vital lessons: integrity. As she walked through the busy market streets, she noticed a small crowd gathered near a jewelry stall. Curious, she approached and saw a young man, frantic and distraught, explaining to the vendor that a gold bracelet, clearly visible in the stall, had been mistakenly sold to someone else. The vendor, an elderly man with trembling hands, insisted he had sold it to the correct person. Zuri's pulse quickened. She had seen the bracelet yesterday while walking past the stall. It had caught the sunlight and glinted like fire. She knew exactly what had happened, and she had a choice: speak the truth and possibly upset the buyer and the vendor, or remain silent and let confusion prevail. Taking a deep breath, Zuri grounded herself in the present. Fear and hesitation surfaced, but she remembered Kelechi's words. Presence demanded honesty, courage, and clarity. Zuri stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "I saw the bracelet yesterday. It was in the stall. I believe the vendor may have sold it correctly, and perhaps there was a misunderstanding." The crowd hushed, all eyes on her. The young man looked skeptical, but he followed her as she walked to the stall and carefully recounted the details she had observed. The vendor nodded slowly, appreciating her honesty. With her guidance, the confusion was resolved. The bracelet had indeed been correctly sold, but the buyer had misunderstood. Zuri felt a surge of quiet satisfaction. Her actions had not only clarified the situation, but also prevented conflict and ensured fairness. Integrity, she realized, was not always easy. It required courage, clarity, and the willingness to act in the present, even when doing so might create temporary discomfort. Later, walking home through the golden Lagos streets, she reflected on the lesson. Life often presented moments that demanded honesty, even at the risk of confrontation. True happiness, she realized, was inseparable from integrity. Without it, the present moment would feel hollow, and the joy of being fully alive would be compromised. That night, as she lay in bed, she whispered to herself, "Happiness is not just noticing or giving, it is living honestly, acting with integrity, and standing in truth, even when it is difficult. Presence without integrity is incomplete." The morning sun rose over Lagos in warm golden hues, casting long shadows across the busy streets. Zuri awoke with a quiet excitement. Today was special. The community center was organizing a citywide cleanup and revitalization project, and she had been asked to help coordinate. She felt a surge of purpose. This was an opportunity to witness firsthand how collective action could transform a neighborhood, both physically and emotionally. As she walked toward the center, she noticed neighbors chatting, children running with buckets of water, and elders carrying tools. Everyone, from the smallest child to the oldest resident, seemed to have a role to play. Zuri smiled, realizing that joy could be multiplied when people worked together, noticing, caring, and contributing to a shared goal. Once at the center, she gathered the volunteers and began organizing tasks. Some painted murals on walls that had once been dull and gray. Others cleared debris from the streets, and the children planted flowers and vegetables along sidewalks. Laughter echoed across the streets, mingling with the rhythmic sound of brushes, hammers, and chatter. Zuri moved among the groups, offering encouragement, guidance, and support. At first, some participants were hesitant, unsure if their contributions mattered. Zuri reminded them gently, "Every effort counts. Every hand, every smile, every act of care creates change. Notice the impact of your presence right now." Hours passed, and by afternoon, the neighborhood had transformed. Walls that had been lifeless were now adorned with vibrant murals.
Later, capturing the scene in his sketches. Children laughing as they painted, neighbors working side by side, and Zuri at the center, guiding with gentle authority. "This is the power of many," he said. "Happiness is not just individual. It thrives when we build, care, and create together." Zuri nodded, watching a small group of children offer flowers to an elderly man who had once been too frail to participate. Their small act of kindness, witnessed and joined by many, radiated joy through the entire street. She realized that presence, empathy, and care were amplified in the community, creating an energy far greater than the sum of its parts. As the sun dipped low, casting golden reflections over the transformed streets, Zuri walked home, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. She whispered to herself, "Happiness grows when it is shared, multiplied through presence, effort, and love. Together, we create joy that lasts beyond any single moment." The morning in Lagos was alive with motion. The streets pulsed with the sounds of commerce, chatter, and the occasional burst of laughter.
Zuri stepped out, feeling a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. Today, she was scheduled to present her mobile community garden project to city officials, a major opportunity, but one fraught with unpredictability. As she walked, she noticed a street performer juggling flaming torches while balancing on a narrow plank. The crowd gasped, some cheering, some holding their breath. Zuri stopped, mesmerized. The performer's every move demanded full presence, courage, and trust in the unknown. A misstep could lead to disaster, yet he moved with grace and joy, flowing with uncertainty rather than resisting it. She realized in that instant that life itself was much like this performance. Plans could falter, outcomes could surprise, and fear could arise at every turn. True happiness, she understood, came not from controlling every outcome, but from dancing with the unpredictable rhythm of life. At the city hall, officials examined her proposal with sharp scrutiny. Questions came rapidly, some challenging assumptions, others probing for flaws. A sense of anxiety threatened to creep in, but Zuri paused, grounding herself in the present. She took a deep breath and responded honestly, with clarity and confidence, embracing the moment as it unfolded rather than fearing the outcome. Unexpectedly, a technical glitch caused her presentation slides to freeze. For a moment, she felt panic rising. But she smiled, letting go of control, and spoke freely, relying on her knowledge, passion, and presence. The officials listened intently, impressed by her adaptability and sincerity. By the end, her project was approved with support for implementation, but more importantly, Zuri had discovered an even deeper truth. Uncertainty need not be a source of fear. It was an invitation to be fully present, creative, and courageous. Happiness thrived not despite unpredictability, but because of it. As she walked back through the lively streets of Lagos, she noticed children laughing as they chased a stray dog, vendors improvising to attract customers, and neighbors exchanging greetings. Life was alive in its unpredictability, and every moment carried its own unique magic. That evening, Zuri whispered softly to herself, "Happiness is not a guarantee, and life is never fully certain, but by embracing the unknown with presence, courage, and trust, I can dance with each moment, and joy flows naturally through me." The morning sun rose over Lagos with a brilliance that seemed almost magical, illuminating every corner of the city with warmth and possibility. Zuri stepped outside with a quiet sense of anticipation. Over the past weeks, she had walked through lessons of presence, courage, patience, gratitude, forgiveness, mentorship, and community service. Each step had been transformative, yet today a deeper realization awaited her, one about the invisible threads that connected her life to those of others. As she wandered through the familiar streets, she noticed how lives intersected in small, meaningful ways. The young boy she had helped learn to read waved to her across the street, clutching a book he had mastered. The elderly woman whose stolen beads had been partially restored offered her a warm smile, her hands steady and strong. Children tended to small gardens she had helped organize, sharing fruits and laughter with neighbors who had once seemed distant and disconnected. Zuri paused at the corner of the market where she had once intervened to resolve a dispute over a bracelet. Watching the exchange of smiles, gratitude, and mutual respect, she realized that her actions, however small, had created ripples that extended far beyond what she could see. Every gesture of care, every act of presence, every moment of courage and honesty had woven her life into the lives of countless others, forming a vibrant, living web of connection. Kelechi appeared beside her, sketchbook in hand, capturing the scenes of intertwined lives. "Do you see it now?" he asked softly. "Every choice you've made, every act of awareness and care has created connections you might never fully know. Happiness is not isolated. It grows in the spaces between people, in shared moments, and in the ripples of presence."
Zuri nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. She had spent so long believing that happiness lay in the future, in accomplishments or milestones, yet now she could see that her joy had been unfolding all along, woven through the relationships she nurtured, the lives she touched, and the moments she embraced. The present, she realized, was not a single moment, but an intricate tapestry, alive with connection and meaning. That evening, as the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, Zuri walked home slowly. She noticed the laughter of children echoing down the streets, vendors closing their stalls with warm exchanges, and neighbors greeting each other with gentle nods. She whispered softly, "Happiness has never been in the future. It lives here, now, in every act of care, in every connection we make, in every moment we notice. If we embrace the present fully, we find joy in ways that last beyond any single achievement." The morning sun rose over Lagos with a brilliance that seemed almost magical, illuminating every corner of the city with warmth and possibility. Zuri stepped outside with a quiet sense of anticipation. Over the past weeks, she had walked through lessons of presence, courage, patience, gratitude, forgiveness, mentorship, and community service. Each step had been transformative, yet today a deeper realization awaited her, one about the invisible threads that connected her life to those of others. As she wandered through the familiar streets, she noticed how lives intersected in small, meaningful ways. The young boy she had helped learn to read waved to her across the street, clutching a book he had mastered. The elderly woman whose stolen beads had been partially restored offered her a warm smile, her hands steady and strong. Children tended to small gardens she had helped organize, sharing fruits and laughter with neighbors who had once seemed distant and disconnected. Zuri paused at the corner of the market where she had once intervened to resolve a dispute over a bracelet. Watching the exchange of smiles, gratitude, and mutual respect, she realized that her actions, however small, had created ripples that extended far beyond what she could see. Every gesture of care, every act of presence, every moment of courage and honesty had woven her life into the lives of countless others, forming a vibrant, living web of connection. Kalechi appeared beside her, sketchbook in hand, capturing the scenes of intertwined lives. "Do you see it now?" he asked softly. "Every choice you've made, every act of awareness and care has created connections you might never fully know. Happiness is not isolated. It grows in the spaces between people, in shared moments, and in the ripples of presence." Zuri nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. She had spent so long believing that happiness lay in the future, in accomplishments or milestones, yet now she could see that her joy had been unfolding all along, woven through the relationships she nurtured, the lives she touched, and the moments she embraced. The present, she realized, was not a single moment, but an intricate tapestry, alive with connection and meaning. That evening, as the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, Zuri walked home slowly. She noticed the laughter of children echoing down the streets, vendors closing their stalls with warm exchanges, and neighbors greeting each other with gentle nods. She whispered softly, "Happiness has never been in the future. It lives here, now, in every act of care, in every connection we make, in every moment we notice. If we embrace the present fully, we find joy in ways that last beyond any single achievement." The morning sun rose over Lagos with a brilliance that seemed almost magical, illuminating every corner of the city with warmth and possibility. Zuri stepped outside with a quiet sense of anticipation, casting warm hues over the city. She walked home through streets alive with laughter, music, and stories. Her drum thumped gently at her side, a heartbeat echoing the rhythm of the city and her own. She whispered to herself,
I thought happiness was in the future, but it has been here all along, in every breath, every connection, every moment I have truly lived. And in that moment, Zuri felt complete, not because the festival celebrated her, but because she had finally learned to celebrate life itself, fully, attentively, and joyfully. The morning sun rose slowly over Lagos, casting a soft golden glow over the city's rooftops, streets, and bustling alleys. Zuri woke with a sense of calm fulfillment, her heart light and open. The journey she had traveled, the storms, the lessons, the triumphs, the losses, the laughter, and the tears, had brought her to a place she had never imagined, a deep, abiding joy rooted in the present. She stepped outside, greeted by the familiar sounds of the city, vendors calling out their wares, children's laughter echoing in the alleyways, the distant hum of buses, and the gentle rustle of palm fronds swaying in the morning breeze. Every sound, every sight, every scent felt amplified in its beauty. Today, the present itself felt like a gift, a living, breathing testament to all she had learned. Zuri wandered through the market, noticing the people she had helped along her journey. The young boy she had taught to read waved and ran to show her a book he had finished. The elderly woman whose stall she had helped restore smiled warmly, her hands steady and strong. Kalechi sketched quietly beside her, capturing the rhythm of life in delicate lines and vibrant colors. Each interaction was a thread in a tapestry of connection, a reminder that happiness had never been a distant goal, it had always been here, woven through her attention, care, and presence. She thought of the lessons she had learned: courage in the face of fear, patience in life's unfolding, forgiveness for the past, empathy and mentorship for others, honesty and integrity, gratitude for the small and unseen, service to her community, and the power of embracing uncertainty. All these threads converged in a single radiant truth. Happiness is not a destination, nor is it something to be chased in the future. It is here, now, in the present moment. As she sat by the river that cut through Lagos, watching the reflection of the sun on the water, Zuri reflected on her journey. Each chapter of her life had been a lesson in noticing, in being present, and in living fully. Every hardship, every triumph, every act of kindness, and every moment of awareness had led her to this clarity. The present was a gift, fragile yet enduring, fleeting yet eternal, simple yet infinitely rich. With the city alive around her, Zuri whispered softly to herself, "I thought happiness was somewhere ahead, in achievements or milestones, but it has been here all along, in every breath, every heartbeat, every connection, and every moment I have truly lived. The present is the treasure, and now I hold it in my hands." She arose, carrying her drum and sketches, her footsteps light and steady. The streets of Lagos stretched out before her, vibrant and alive, reflecting the fullness of life itself. Zuri knew that this was not the end, but the beginning of a lifetime of noticing, of presence, of joy. And in that understanding, she found a happiness deeper and more enduring than any she had ever imagined, because she had finally discovered it in the present.